dying, the only guaranteed event in our life. Are you prepared for that? Let's take a look into two people's lives for a moment. Here we have Steve, a loving husband and father of 2 young children. Steve is a successful accountant, and a few years ago he was convinced to make his own funeral arrangements so that he knew in case something happened, his family would be taken care of. Now, here we have Peter, a fat 45-year-old man who has worked at a brewery for most of his life. Peter is not a very careful person, from drinking and driving on a nightly basis to fighting human-sized chickens in the street. He's on a quick road to death. His immaturity got the best of him as he refused to prearrange his funeral. Both families eat dinner at the same time each night, and each of the men's wives made grilled chicken with corn, their favorite. But, the corn was too scrumptious, and both men ate way too much at once, and both choked to death. Well, that escalated quickly. Both families are devastated as they arrive at the funeral home the next day, both expecting the worst. Steve's family goes in first. The funeral director sits him in a room and already has the prearranged funeral contract in his hands. What a relief, because his wife can barely put together words as it is, as she's still in shock. The funeral director went over Steve's arranged wishes to make sure it was all correct. As Steve's wife reached for her purse, the funeral director said, "No, ma'am, that is not necessary. Everything has been taken care of." She feels somewhat relieved and can now grieve without worrying about funeral arrangements or money. Now the Griffins enter the funeral home, not knowing really what to expect. The funeral director sits them down in the same room and begins asking them questions that they'd never thought they'd have to answer. How could they know what Peter's last wishes were? They all became anxious and overwhelmed and all decided to leave the room to get some air. When they come back, money comes up. The Griffins aren't the wealthiest family in the world, and we all know how stressful money can be. The Griffins eventually get in an argument and eventually start fighting each other. What a freaking mess! This all could have been avoided had Peter done the responsible act of making his own funeral prearrangements before he died. Don't be like Peter, be like Steve.